Hello YouTube, I'm here today to make the pendant of the video I made about high volume or the 10 by 10s German volume training video and all of the issues associated with that practice. And today I'm doing the intensity portion. And I'm coming at you heated, wearing only a t-shirt. It's, 30 degrees in here? Because this topic really grinds my gears and I have so much to say about it. I have found that for me, the ability to criticize something, an ideology or an application of programming is made much easier if I find someone that disagrees with me, because I can bounce my arguments off of theirs, and it's much easier to structure something when I can debunk things so that I don't just have to come up with things because these ideas that are clearly incorrect are not in my head. And I've done that with the Natty or Not website to encourage you guys to stay natty, to show you that there is no natural limit. But I've never really found that for volume, which is why I don't really have much material to talk about when it comes to improper applications of volume. That being said, I have recently, thanks to some of you guys, found a gold mine on the internet again of someone who, in my opinion, preaches absolutely abhorrent training practices. And this person is really helping me because every time I read one of their posts, I have to fight the urge to drink bleach because I feel like they're making me lose some neurons. So I actually read through their posts and I came up with something today that is going to take around 20 minutes. I'm going to develop my thoughts surrounding high intensity training and all of the memes that are connected with that practice. If you like this video, let me know and I can make a series focused only on that individual, which calls himself American Übermensch. Some of you guys actually linked his stuff in my comments and I checked it out. So let me know if you would be interested. I can make a different series just like the Natty or Not, where I only discuss his practice and I can criticize it. And I think it would be beneficial for you because it would help me develop certain portions of the programming knowledge that I sometimes don't get to. So let's get onto the topic of high intensity training. First off, let's discuss intensity because as strange as it sounds, a lot of people don't know what intensity is. And it's not necessarily their fault. It's a principle and a concept that is extremely easy to grasp, but it's been bastardized. And throughout the years, every single time there is a concept of programming that is straightforward, it always gets bent. And the reason it gets bent is, one, to help people market something they want to sell, and so they modify the idea so that it actually fits their product. Or it's people who modify it because they want to make sure that their idea of optimal training is correlated by science or by knowledge or by experience, empirical evidence, and so they have to make sure that the theory fits the practice. And because most of the time the practice doesn't actually reflect that the theory is correct, the theory also fails. And that is super important to get. Intensity is the rate of exertion that a lift is going to take from you to complete. That's it. There is 100%, which is the best effort you can produce and the max amount of weight you can lift. And usually you are going to use 1 rep maxes to calculate that because the more reps you do, the tougher it is to actually pinpoint exactly the percentage of intensity, because you understand that by simple virtue of multiplying the number of reps, it's tougher to have a clear percentage. This doesn't mean that people need to do 1 rep maxes to use percentages of RPE. It's just that for people who want clear calculus, it's easier that way. I can tell you it's not necessary. You can base your percentages off of 10 rep maxes, etc. But the lower you go, the more effective it's going to be for things like absolute intensity or relative intensity calculus that are needed in the training. All of that is in the hypertrophy series. I'm not going to detail too much on that because I want to get to the juicy stuff. So that's that. Anything besides that, shouting when you lift, being hemmed up, forced failure, going above 100%, partials with chains, overloading, all of that is jargon. It means nothing. It doesn't magically change what intensity is. It doesn't allow you to exist within super effective windows of intensity. It's still intensity. It still is. And sometimes it's misapplications of intensity, so it's less effective than straight up doing RPEs. People use percentages and RPEs because they work. It's not just fancy science stuff. It actually is a clear indication and implication that the muscle is being pushed to the limit. After that, we could discuss what high intensity training should mean for people who have a brain. And high intensity training, just like high volume training, would mean pushing the value of intensity so that you progress, so that you progress in strength, in tonnage over time. And that is actually the correct way to do that. Your intensity is going to, of course, progress because you're going to be putting more and more weight on the bar. Does it mean that the percentages used are going to progress? No, you might stick to 90%. Depending on the rep range, especially if you use an evolving rep range, it's going to ramp up and it's going to temper down. That is a different discussion. It's tonnage fluctuation, but that's normal. You will never be, of course, able to use more than 100% intensity, and I would also argue that for bodybuilding, it's not necessary. It's more dangerous than anything, and you don't really need to go that high. That being said, 95%, 90%, all of that is perfectly fine. So high intensity training in reality is proper training. You absolutely need that. Anyone who tells you can just focus on volume and the pump is either taking PEDs or they don't look like they lift in real life and they're pumping your head full of lies. You need intensity, it is key. Issue being that, as I explained before, concepts get bastardized, and high intensity training is exactly that. It's the application of intensity, which is a valuable programming principle, to the extreme, which makes it a meme. And the reason why I say it's a meme is because there is a group of people out there who preach high intensity training as being the most effective way to build muscle. And the simple onus of their practice is this: you only focus on intensity. And I'm going to explain why this is, 1, stupid, 2, misguided, and 3, it shows that these people know nothing about programming. So to continue down the list, I also want to mention one thing that I see across the board on YouTube Fitness and that I've always found exceedingly annoying, which is when people claim a method is superior because they produce results for them. There are so many things wrong with attributing a value or quality to a program or product because it worked for you. First off, it just might be because you're an outlier or an anomaly, but for the most part, it's not, because we respond to pretty similar stimulus, and there's not a single person on earth that will respond better to 20% intensity rather than 80%. The truth is that the biggest issue with that mindset is that these tend to be people who've never tried anything before, and they go all out for that one practice, and if it works, they're going to say it's the best thing that's ever existed. If it doesn't work, they will say it's the devil. Go on any big YouTuber, go in their comments, you will find people say, oh, I followed his dietary advice and I lost 80 pounds. Is it because the guy's dietary advices are that great, or is it because you stuffed your face full of chips and I don't know what else, McDonald's for years, and you switched to a diet of whole foods and you lost the weight? It has nothing to do with the advice being good. It has something to do with the terrible application and lifestyle that you applied to your existence before you started following the advice. So technically the advice is neutral. Same for programs. I see people say, oh, I made the greatest gains off of this program. You were a novice. You could have been sent to the gulag and walk on carrying rocks. As long as you got a caloric surplus, you would have made the same gains. It's not the programs. You cannot base the evaluation of a practice off of things like this. It doesn't work. I say that why? High intensity, every single time I see someone preaching it, it's some guy who clearly had never actually applied intensity in their training, who did high intensity training and got results. Well, yeah, you got results. You started doing something you've never done before. It's the equivalent of someone saying, oh, wow, I started doing squats and my legs blew up. Yes, because you've never trained them before. Look at the weights applied across the board. It's always the same logic. And it also disproves the idea that it's a good method of programming, because if that was the case, then, I don't know, doing push-ups would also be the best for your chest, because if you do push-ups and you've never trained your chest, they would grow. Again, it's I have flashbacks of me looking at that page and thinking, this must be trolling. Because at first I thought the guy, American Ubermensch, was trolling because there was no way someone could be that dense. But I have now the intimate conviction that he isn't, and that the people who follow him also aren't. And that needs to be corrected quick. I also want to talk about the worshipping of the people who push HIT, because when you see a method, across the board, it's always the same logic. There is a certain person that is pushing that method, and the people who follow the method, they don't really like the method, they like the person. And so they are going to, there's a very fancy term for that I forgot, but they are going to misconstrue the affection they have for the method by thinking that it's because the method is good, but in reality it's because they're emotionally attached to the person who pushed the method. And across the board, you will find that even if the method gets disproven, even if the person that created the method says 2 years afterwards that it's not the best, they still are attached. And that is logic completely out of the window, and it's pure emotion. And the issue is that every time I see someone pushing high intensity training, their examples and their models are Mike Mentzer and Dorian Yates. Issue is, they're both on roids. They were both on roids. You cannot base as a natural your training principles on people who take juice, because juice makes you grow regardless of what you do. And the proof of that is, look at how many pro bodybuilders train different styles. You got guys who go heavy, you got guys who never go heavy, you got guys who do only machines, only bench on that specific machine, they only do that movement for the shoulder. Across the board, they're all gigantic and much bigger than any natural. So does that mean that all of it works? Nope. Almost zero of it works. You know why? Because you're basing your training off of someone who takes grams of hormones. You cannot, as a natural, do that. You need to look at other naturals, people who are serious and who can explain to you how programming works and how progression functions. And the issue too is that every single time I have one of these guys in my comments, or I find one on the internet in the wild, I ask them, okay, show your physique. If high intensity training works, show your physique. And they always just fail to do so. Same for that American Ubermensch guy, he doesn't show his physique. So I would expect the guy to be 260 ripped, right? If the methods of Dorian and Mentzer work for naturals, it should work for everyone. So that's my big issue. And there are also the issue of semantics and of being smug. I personally detest smugness with a passion. And when someone uses jokes or, personal attacks, misdirections to promote a certain training principle, I immediately know that the principle must be garbage. And what I see from these guys is that their big thing, their big attack is saying that anyone who doesn't do HIT doesn't train hard. First off, what does training hard mean? It means absolutely nothing. If you are at the state or rate in your training journey where doing 25 minutes of training is enough for you to progress, that's training hard. Because your work capacity that is here is going to constitute the status of hard or easy, okay? For me, I can train for 2 hours with high intensity windows. If I do an hour, I haven't trained hard. If I do 2 hours, I train hard. If I go above, I reach above my maximum recoverable volume and I overtrain. It's the same for everyone. But these guys think that because they shout and they scream and it's painful and they grimace when they train harder than others. Doesn't work like that. First off, you shouldn't even try to compare how hard you work with others because they're different than you. And exterior signs of hardship don't create or structure something that could be considered hard. A hard training exists on paper and then is realized in practice. That's what hard means. And if you train hard, you progress. And I read, and that is, again, something that I will wait for you guys to give me the green light on or not. But again, I have access to that guy's page. He posts text and memes all the time that each meme I could make a 20-minute video about, just destroying his logic. So if it would be something that interests you guys, let me know. But I found one where it was a long text that said, muscles are for brief physical effort. So that was the premise of the argument, which was already false. Because muscles are not for that. Muscles move the skeleton. Regardless of the way you move the skeleton, that's what they do. So it's already not true, because if it was the case, what does that mean? You can only use the muscles to sprint or things like this? Look at farmers. Anyone who's worked the earth, who has worked in the fields, knows that farmers are extremely strong and they tend to be quite bulky, especially if their diet is aligned with their dietary needs. They don't work intensely. They don't dig a ditch or a trench for, I don't know, a minute as fast as they can. They just walk all day, picking up stuff all day. They barely lift anything super heavy in terms of pound for pound strength, and yet they grow from it. Why? They utilize their muscles. Utilization of muscle is what makes the muscle grow. After that, there are applications of training that need to be respected so that you don't spend 15 hours a day in the gym, which includes high intensity. But saying that only high intensity makes muscle grow is idiotic. So that's the premise that's already incorrect. And he follows that up by saying, muscle only grows if you fail to generate enough force, which technically means you went to failure. That already is confusing because it would mean that in that case, failing lifts again and again would generate more muscle growth. And it also is the idea, and I will get back to that, but it's the notion that you need to put the muscle in a situation where it fails. And to me, that's misunderstanding what failure is. I made a video about that. Training to failure means training short of failure. If you fail a rep, you actually shot yourself in the foot because failing reps is a sign that there is an issue with the program. And all of the practices of high intensity training, like forced negative and forced reps and all of that, that is just a way to elongate the end of the set when the set should have ended already. And the intensity that you accumulate in that extra window of time, yes, is extra intensity because it's extra damage on the muscle, but it's not magical. It's not 120% intensity. You know, if you could color intensity and normal intensity was purple and the advanced intensity of HIT training was green, the green intensity doesn't magically make your muscle grow more. It's still intensity. It's all purple. It's just that you get a tiny bit more of it. And you'll see that it's an issue. Why? Because these guys do only one set. So that's for I've just set up the stage. I just set up the stage for you guys here, okay? And now I want to get into the details and the nitty-gritties of high intensity. But before I do that, I need to check the time. Okay. Well, good. Again, so many things I want to talk about here. I might need to redevelop that in another series. But all of the things I see with high intensity that are just plain wrong. No accessories. By accessories, they mean accessory set. Because high intensity trainers only do one hard set. And they will not just do one hard set per training, although I have seen people claim they do that. Meaning they come into the gym, they warm up, they do one set of bench, they go home. That, of course, is lazy training. You cannot navigate your way out of that one. It's plain lazy. Some will do one hard set of bench, one hard set of squat, etc. The issue with that practice and application is, one, it means that you're pretty much doing full body, which I will make a video about full body. Not a fan. Some people make it work. It's a program that can work if you do it properly, but most people, they mess it up completely and they wonder why they don't progress. But issue with that is you warm up for a squat and a bench so that an upper and a lower lift, both requiring a lot of warm up because you have a lot of strength potential on them. So technically, yeah, you didn't spend much time in the gym, but in reality, the time you spent in the gym was wasted for the most part because you had to re-warm up for one of the two lifts. So even if you didn't spend as much time in the gym, the effective time you spent in there was misspent. And that's something that I've seen quite a lot where high-intensity trainers will tell people you have to follow the Mike Mentzer seminar, which I'll have to watch and read his books, even just to debunk them. But the idea was you have to do only that one set and then you have to rest. And if you fail to rest and you do extra exercise in the middle because you want volume to drive hypertrophy, then it's your fault if you didn't make gains, which is a catch-22. Because if that guy doesn't make gains, even following the program, these guys will always find an excuse by saying, oh, you didn't give it enough time, etc. I also want to mention that I've seen one thing. I've seen people claim that after doing high-intensity training, they were trembling and shivering because of the muscle fatigue. That's not an indication of muscle growth. Soreness is not an indication of muscle growth. Nothing is an indication of muscle growth besides muscle growth. The best factor that you can look at is strength progression over time and tonnage accumulation. But if you get flu-like symptoms and if you can barely sit on the toilet, that's just a sign that you have poor recovery or that you are experiencing new DOMs because you've started doing something new. If you've been training for 6 months with the same program, the same lifts, and you still get DOMs, it means that your frequency is too low, meaning that your body has the time to unlearn how to heal in between workouts. That's not good. You're not even progressing at this point, you're just regressing every single time. They refuse to up volume and frequency, which shows that they apply intensity to their training without understanding what intensity is. Intensity is directly correlated with volume and frequency. If you up your intensity, you up your volume. Unless you base it on strict factors of strength progression with only one hard set. If you do one hard set and you add a rep, guess what? You upped your volume. You didn't up the intensity. The intensity went up by virtue of the volume going up because it's all connected. Therefore, someone who tells you, I want to drive intensity up, this person needs to also drive frequency and volume up. And yes, the relationship and the ratios are going to be skewed towards what factor you want to improve the most, but you can't have the intensity do this and volume and frequency remain here. It's not possible. So again, it's just a meme of people who say, oh, just intensity is all you need. Well, no, because even with your poor application of training, you still don't only up intensity. These guys tend to not touch the frequency, but I'll get to that. That's also a big issue. I mean, frequency is the amount of times weekly and intra-workout that you repeat the movements. You understand that at some point you want to maximize that. If you have the ability to crash the legs every 2 days, recover and grow, that's going to be much better than doing it once a week for multitudes of reasons. One, because you don't have, and that's, I will make a full video about recovery because it's super important to understand. But if your recovery is like a bathtub and it's this big, okay, and you train your legs and you go all the way up, okay, you need to give time to the legs to slowly recover. So that's the bathtub that empties itself, okay? So if it takes 2 days for the bathtub to empty, you want to fill up again after 2 days, okay, so that it can empty again, etc., etc. Just because you've decided to only train the legs once a week doesn't mean that the bathtub is suddenly this big. Or it doesn't mean that it's going to drain faster. All of these are imaginative applications of poor programming principles. The bathtub is always the same size. It might sometimes drain faster or slower based on what you give your body to recover from, but if you only train once a week for a body part, it's subpar. There's no way around that. It's always going to be subpar, unless you're sandbagging on that body part, which is a different thing altogether. I have seen from the American Ubermensch that he does 20-minute workouts and that he preaches 20-minute workouts. I don't know about you, but for me, in 20 minutes, I'm not even warmed up yet. Most of my warm-up take at least 30 minutes. So he either has immensely low strength and he benches maybe 40 kilos, and so he can warm up quick, or he deadlifts 80 kilos, I don't know. But even if that was the case, a 20-minute workout is a waste of time. Meaning that I would only tell supra novices to do 20-minute workouts. People who have zero work capacity like I was when I started, for them, yes, okay, do 20-minute workouts, that's all you can do and muster, because after that the bathtub is full and you need to let the bathtub empty. And the more I speak, the more you should be horrified, because I'm painting a really grim picture here. I'm painting a picture of people who only train a few times a week, sometimes only 2 times a week, only for 20 minutes with no accessories. It's not possible to grow off of that. It just is not. Unless someone documents their training, and even then I wouldn't even believe them, because it just is so outside of the realm of what should be possible that in reality the only people who grow from that are steroid users, which tends to happen. The people who were the most successful promoting that are steroid users. And the reason why they get away with that is the steroids make them grow regardless of what they do. They tend to lie about the amount of stuff they took, and they really just need to come in and stimulate the muscle. And regardless of how they stimulate the muscle, they will see growth. So I don't think naturals should base their training principles off of that. This is a question that needs to be discussed in another episode of How to Spot a Fake Night. They do only one set, so 20-minute workouts, only one hard set, 2 times a week. Of course, that will make you massive. That makes total sense. One hard set. What these people fail to understand is that I've heard bogus arguments from them that they say that, oh, anything beyond one hard set is worthless because you've already spent all of the energy of the muscle and now it needs to recover. That only works if you think that the muscle is something that can only be used one time in and cannot recover and cannot actually do work in succession, which it's a muscle, it's endurance, it's the point of a muscle. The issue with that mindset is that they even don't believe that themselves, because if they did believe that, then they wouldn't rest, right? Because what is resting in between sessions? It's recovery, to let the body recover, the muscle recover from the damage. So if you accept that as being true, you also accept that that potential for recovery also exists in between sets. So if you can get 8 reps on set 1, then rest and get 7 or 6 reps on set 2, you further improve the damage on the muscle fibers, which then will recruit more muscle when it comes to recovering it, that is going to grow more. That is, again, basic programming principles and hypertrophy principles, but I have seen people and that guy say that it's not true, saying that anything past that one hard set is wasted sets. It's tough even to argue against that because it's so stupid that I don't have an argument. You know, when sometimes you argue against someone who is idiotic and you're at a loss because you're grasping for logic and there is none, so you can't base your argument on anything because there is no base here. I've heard these people claim that they make fast gains, it's the best system, and again I ask, show proof. Because understand also that if the high intensity training principle is true and correct, it would mean that by doing only one set, you are bolstering muscle hypertrophy, which also means that if you're not too lazy, you would replicate those hard trainings with only one hard set to multiply protein synthesis and grow the muscle at an insane rate. Issue is, of course, they came up with an excuse to explain why they can't do that by saying, oh, you need to rest 24 hours or 72 hours between sessions to recover from that one hard set. That entire thing just feels and sounds like a regimen that was implanted and created by people who don't like to train. They just want to come in and do a few movements in the gym and then go home. Across the board, all of these programs that tend to tell you to, oh, just go in the gym, 25 minutes, you'll be done, just do that quick movement and you'll be done. All of these are lazy. They lack the volume and the frequency. I also read that they take weeks off to recover. I'm not going to get and delve into that, but deload weeks are useless for bodybuilders. I made a video about that. You don't need them unless you're injured. And especially not with that. Can you imagine? You met someone and they tell you, oh, I'm taking a week off because I did a 20-minute training on Monday and it really drained me. Would you take that person seriously? Would you take advice from them? Of course you wouldn't. That's why these people, when they actually try and propagate that type of training principles, they use avatars. They don't use their face or their body because they know that people would laugh at them. Or they misdirect the attention by using icons from the past, like Mentzer or Dorian, and they say, oh, it's that guy saying that, and he's jacked. Yeah, he was also on steroids. And I'm going to stop here, but I'm just going to end with a little enigma for you guys. I also read a post from that guy saying that if you can really recover and be fresh in 48 hours, even if you do a lot of hard sets and volumes, then why don't you PR every 2 days? And I would answer to that, I would answer, well, you should be PRing every 2 days. If you have the right rep range and the right program, you should be making strength progression every single day, every time you touch a new lift. And if you don't, you're sandbagging, and it needs to be on purpose. And if you don't believe me, it's personally what I've been doing. Look at the lifts I film. I've been progressing on every single lift with no interruption, and I add a rep every single time. It's a PR every time I set foot in the gym. That's a good program. That's a program that feeds me progression, that keeps me motivated. And I highly encourage you to try and find a program that works like this. So I'm going to stop here. Any questions about high intensity training, I will answer. If you are interested in the series about high intensity training, I will of course make it because I want to make sure that you guys have fun on this channel. And if you can manage to get American Uppermensch on the channel so I can discuss with him and try and find out what's going on in that brain, I want to understand the logic behind it. Let me know if you can locate the guy, and if you don't, we'll just put Agent Blahino on the case. Thank you for watching. Have a good day.